Thank you for joining us here. Of course, myself, my name is Kyle Flynn. I work with all of the Platinum talent on our site, as well as all of the coaches, much like Bradford here. Today, we're going to be doing a webinar on audio post-production 101. Thankfully, we've got the amazing Bradford here, who's going to share his knowledge with us. Just a little housekeeping for everybody. As normal, this session is recorded. It will be sent out to everybody who registered probably about 24 hours afterwards. And we will do a Q&A session at the end. So probably about 20 minutes left. We'll hop on the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, save them until then and make sure to pop them in the Q&A there. And for anybody's questions that we don't get to, I do apologize. Unfortunately, we only have a certain amount of time. But if Bradford doesn't mind, I'm sure you can reach out and answer any questions we don't get to. So without any further ado, I'll open up the floor to you, Bradford, and take us away.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to just welcome everybody individually. Alan, Alex, Alexander. No, we'd be here forever. Thanks, guys. So I kind of want to start out. My mom's a public speaker, and she always tells me never start out with a negative. But I'm going to start out by just kind of telling you that no matter what I do here today, I'm not the arbiter of absolute truth with regard to sound. There's no, and I mean that, there's no single one way to mix sound and do it correctly. And anybody that says you have to do it this way, EQ always goes before a compressor or vice versa or whatever, run away from that person. Because aside from a couple of sort of hard and fast best practices, rules, this is a creative endeavor and it should be for you as well. So I'm going to give you some information today and you can do it with it what you want. But, just understand that I'm not here to tell you how to do sound. I'm here to give you guidance and hopefully give you some information that lets you make better sound. By the way, when I'm doing this, it's because I got notes, I got notes. So with regard to how I think about plugins or I think about audio or effects, my belief is this: if you can hear them working, you're using them wrong. I'm trying to go for as natural a sound as possible. And plugins and effects, EQ, compression, limiting, gating, they're great. They are necessary. However, they can work against you if you're not using them properly. So if you can hear a gate opening or closing or a compressor compressing, then you're probably using them incorrectly, and it will cost you jobs. That's just a fact. Because your audition, think about it this way, it's the only representation of your studio and the sound of that studio that a client's going to hear. And if it sounds like a bad radio DJ, overcompressed and de-essed within an inch of their life, then they can only assume that that's what your studio sounds like. And no client that's going to be giving money is going to guess whether your sound is going to sound right or not. They're going to hear your audition. They're going to go, that's how that studio sounds, and it sounds bad. Too bad. They're a really good voice actor. Put them on the no pile. Because nobody is going to go, well, let's hire them and hope that if we take the compressor out, it's going to sound better. Nobody's going to do that. There's money involved. They want to know that what they're getting is what they're getting, and it sounds good and it's great, right? And they might be able to ask you to adjust a little bit, but if it's overcompressed or if it's EQ'd to within an inch of its life, just judicious use of plugins is sort of the watchword here. So just be careful. Be careful with those plugins, right? Also remember, you can't look at VO from an audio perspective singularly. From, gate will fix it, EQ will fix it, compression will fix it. You have to look at it from a holistic point of view, because the sound of your studio is the sound of the plugins, but it's also your technique, it's also your room, it's also any extraneous noises. And sometimes you're just going to have to figure out what can fix what, because again, EQ doesn't fix everything. Gating doesn't fix everything. If you have a gulping problem, if you're a voice actor that is reading scripts and you're constantly going like this when you're reading, that's a performance problem. That's not a gate issue. That's a performative issue. And that's something that you need to get a coaching for, things like that. If you have your studio on the same circuit as your refrigerator, and every time it kicks on, you get a click in your audio signal, or you get a hum from something. That's a construction issue. That's as easy as just switching the outlet. But EQ is not going to fix that. Gating is not going to fix that. I mean, it might, but it's going to make the gate work in a way that it doesn't need to. And again, if it's working too hard, then it's not working correctly. So think about your audio holistically. Don't just think about what I'm telling you today as far as plugins and how to sculpt your sound as the be all end all of how to fix any problems in your studio. You're a creative individual, so be creative. I'm going to go over the whole chain, but I'm probably going to spend a little more time on compression and EQ than anything else because it seems to be the most offensive flaws that I hear in my students' audio, or people that send me audio that go, how does my studio sound? Almost every time I'm going to tell them to dial back the compression, dial back some EQ of some sort. Because they're the ones that you can get in trouble with, just a lot easier. But let's get a couple of things out of the way really quick. And I apologize because I'm probably going to make some people angry. Number one, avoid people in this industry that use the words always and never too much. If they're telling you always do this or never do that, or always do this or never do that, it doesn't matter if it's audio, voiceover, coaching, whatever, run away from those people, because those are people that don't know any other way to do it. So they believe that's the right way. There is no one way, right? Every job is different. Every, studio is different. Every voice is different. So there are very few always and nevers. There are some, but they're very few. Number two, stop watching YouTube videos that are for musicians and singers. They're going to give you very little to no practical advice. They might explain how an EQ works or how a compressor works, but musicians and singers work at much higher volumes than voice actors do. So when they're using a compressor or when they're using an EQ, it works very, very differently than when a voice actor does it, because we're just talking, right? So our instruments don't need to corral the sound as much. Plus, we're not mixing it with music and everything else. That's somebody else's job. We want natural sounding VO. Do ask the internet about things. That's what it's there for. But understand that most of the videos about plugins have musical applications and non-voiceover applications. So be careful with that stuff. If you're watching a audio podcast and it is about VO and they have garbage sound, they're going to teach you how to make garbage sound. All right. If their sound is overcompressed, which most of them are, then that's what they're going to teach you. That's, again, that goes along with the audition. They're telling you what they think sounds good. And, if that's what you want, great, but you don't. And finally, if I see another person in the world do this, when they're, use this to figure out how to stay away, how far away to get from a microphone, I'm going to cut your hands off. Stop it. And anybody that tells you to do this, run away. Run away. Think about it. Think about it. Is there a correlation between the volume of a person's voice and the size of their hand? No. This is a ridiculous thing. If I were to listen to them, I'd be 6 inches off the mic. Okay. Does this sound good? No, it doesn't. Right? Because this is for singers. Again, this came from the musical world where, you want to be off the mic because you're using much louder volume, higher sound pressure levels, but we're not. We're voice actors. So be creative. Think about it from a perspective of that doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, don't do it. Put your pop screen 2 to 4 inches off your microphone. There's your central spot, right? If you need to do a little bit louder of a VO, lean back a little bit. Okay. If it's a little quieter, lean in a little bit. Done. You can play with your mic pre if you want, but this is absurd. It's absurd, and it needs to be killed with fire. There are 2 types of VO people with regard to sound: old school, new school. Old school, pretty much pre-2000. They like that overcompressed, de-essed sound. And the new school is more of which I think is leading the way now, which is more of a natural sounding VO, less compression, that sort of thing. The old school believes that breathing is a travesty. I don't know why, but they do. So, just understand that the audio with regard to VO has changed. And now it's more of a natural sound than it is an overcompressed, de-essed sound. I've worked in both worlds. I did radio for 10 years in the 90s, and I've been doing voiceover for 20 years. So I know. But that overcompressed sound makes my teeth hurt. Ugh. So here are the things we're going to talk about today. That's out of the way. These are basically your weapons of either your demise or your success. And they're comprised of sort of surgical and blunt instruments. So you've got your mic pre, which is your gain, a pretty blunt instrument. Gates, which are noise mitigators. We're going to talk about all these more specifically. Pretty blunt instrument. Filters, guillotines for cutting off highs and lows. Blunt instrument. They can be a little surgical, but for the most part, they're blunt. EQ, that can be very surgical or it can be blunt. Compression, which is the bane of most people's existence, which can, again, be surgical or it can be blunt, depending on how you use it. And limiters. And that's the last line of defense in your audio. If you want to use it, you don't have to. And that's it. Those are the things that those are your tools in your toolbox. And again, what are we looking for with regard to these tools? If you can hear them working, then you're doing something wrong. I have on this signal right here, 2 compressors and 2 EQs, and it doesn't sound like it. I don't think. You're going to hear the things, right? It's not like you put an EQ on and it doesn't change anything. Of course it does, but it doesn't create egregious change. It doesn't sound unnatural. That's what we're trying to go for. And I think you noticed probably that I didn't mention de-essers in that toolbox. Stop using de-essers. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Look, in the hands of like a professional, de-essers are dodgy at best. In the hands of somebody who doesn't know how to use what they are, it can really damage your sound. De-essers are primarily for singers. You can, in the hands of somebody that doesn't know how to use a de-esser, it's like bringing a hammer to heart surgery, right? De-esser should be called a deplosiver because it doesn't just affect your S's. It affects your T's, D's, K's, P's, G's, all of those sounds. So it's strapped across your entire audio. It's a very blunt instrument and it does something and it does it very well, but it's very unnatural. You can use EQ in the very same way without ruining your sound. So stop using de-essers. Okay? Until, but if you have a degree in de-essing, then go ahead and use it. But to me and my way of thinking and to new voice actors, de-essers get people in a lot of trouble. So be careful with de-essers. That being said, I'm going to share my screen now and I'm going to show you sort of my chain really quick. It's not going to help you in any way. It's more of just for illustrative purposes. It's to show you stuff.
And what program is this?
So this is the Apollo Twin. This is so Apollo, they have a piece of software that goes into your computer that allows them to run plugins on in their box. So the interface that they sell has DSP chips in it that run this plugin for me so that my computer doesn't have to worry about that load. Because these are pretty hefty modeling plugins. And this is a channel strip. It's a Neve channel strip. And just really quick, so you know how, and channel strip just means a collection of effects. Basically, this is what an actual board in a recording studio would look like. You'd have a mic pre. I haven't looked into this specifically, but most of the time what would happen is it would go from the mic pre into the gate here, then into the filter, then into the compressor, then into the EQ, and then out. I don't actually use that EQ. No wonder it sounded so bright. I was like, my sound sounds so weird. So that's how it generally goes. It goes from your mic pre to the gate, to the filter, to the compressor, to the EQ, and then out. However, if you have the EQ in, you can set this PDYN, which is pre-dynamics, because again, there are no always and there are no nevers. So you can send this, and now if I have this button, it goes mic pre, gate, filter, EQ, compressor, out. Depending on how you want to drive your compressor. We'll talk about that in a second. But so, when you see channel strip, I'm going to bring up a couple of them because they all look pretty much the same, right? Oh, I hate when it does this. I can't grab anything because okay. How do I close that window at the top? I hate that window. Anyway, so this is an SSL channel strip. Again, mic pre, there we go, thank you. Mic pre, dynamic section, filter sections down here. You've got your gate here and your EQ over here, and then it goes out. API, they have their channel strip. Same thing. Mic pre, filter, gate, compressor, EQ. Pre-dynamics button if you want to put the EQ before the compressor on all of these. They all have a pre-dynamics button. And then my signal goes from, oh, did I? I did. The drop-down menu at the top got in my way. Apologize.
It always does.
Welcome to the new reality. So I go from this here into an EQ that I do like, an equalizer that I do like, because I'm not using the EQ on the Neve, into this EQ here, then into another compressor, which is a compressor that I like, as well, into a final EQ, and just for shaping, there's not a lot going on here, and then it goes out. So again, this is how I like my sound. It's not the absolute best way to make sound. So we're going to go to Logic, which is my preferred method of doing things. Logic, there's also, there's plenty of others out there. I've got templates set up for things, including this webinar. How exciting. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to strip this of everything. Now this is what my microphone sounds like. All the noise, all the beautiful wonderment of the world. And I can tell you right now, my mic pre is too loud. So what I figured we would do is just kind of go over how to go about maybe troubleshooting your sound or figuring out a good way to get sound. So for audio, basically, you're going to be using both your eyes and your ears. And what I mean by that is it may sound good, but check your meters to make sure. So trust your ears, but confirm with your eyes, basically. And I'll show you that as we go along, what I mean by that. When you're testing your audio or when you're setting up your studio, do it with a real audition. Don't just go, blah, blah, blah. I'm checking my audio. This is what I do. This is how I do stuff. Okay, that sounds good. Because that's not real. That's not how you're going to really be working. So just grab a script and read it through a few times, pick a good take. Look, it's good practice anyway. And check your audio that way. So I've got a script here. I can already tell you that this is too loud. But we're going to do it anyway. So I'm going to hit record. Improve your performance, increase your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talacor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. Now, sounds fine, but performance, increase your comfort. I'm looking at my levels here and I'm at -2. Here's how I look at my starting level when I'm doing this stuff. I look at what do I want my final level to be? And then I'm going to make sure that my starting level is at least 3 decibels lower than that. So I know that I like to work at about -4. I like to send out deliverables, meaning stuff to clients, at about -4. That gives them plenty of headroom, plenty of room to work with if they want to make it louder or they want to put compression on it or do whatever to it. But it also keeps it at a reasonable volume. It's not too quiet. This right now is sitting, so I'm going to hit record. For over a decade, Talacor has helped. That's me just talking at a normal volume and I'm at -1. That's insane. So I'm going to bring this down to about 34 is where it's at. I don't know. Again, I'm listening and I'm trusting my ears and my eyes. So let's try it again. Improve your performance, increase your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talacor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. All right. Is that a good read? I don't know. Improve your performance, increase your comfort. Okay, so I'm at -4, -5. For over a decade, Talacor has helped. Now, there are things you can look at. There are this is called a multimeter. It's going to show me a bunch of stuff. It's going to show me the average volume. It's going to show me some peak volume stuff to see, and then it's going to show me the improve your performance, increase your comfort. So it's telling me that I'm peaking at about -5. Just in what it heard. If I'm going to be doing this fully, I'm going to be doing it over a longer span. But I want to make sure I get to the information that you guys actually want. So the reality is I want to make sure that these numbers aren't crazy. If I'm already at, you know, if I'm already peaking here when I'm starting out, there's no place for me to go with audio. So I want to make sure that I'm in a place where I can move. This is not to say that I won't adjust this later, because I may, but right now I want to set a good base. And so for me, because I know that I want to end up at about -4, meaning my output here, or actually here on the master channel at -4, or as close to that as possible, then I know that I want to start lower than that. Why? EQ is volume. Compression, to a degree, is volume, or can allow more volume. Compressors, anybody that tells you a compressor makes things louder is a liar and doesn't know what they're talking about. Stop listening to people that say that. Compression does what it says on the tin. It makes things quieter. That's its job. It compresses things. It does not make things louder, and I'll show you that. Anyway, sorry. Rant over. So, improve your performance. Is this a good level? Comfort. Prevent injuries. I mean, I'm at -4.7, so I'm going to say no right now. I'm just going to, for the sake of argument, I'm going to roll this down to 31. That should be good. Let's check it. Improve your performance. Increase your comfort. Prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talacor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. But the only true fit that matters is yours. So I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at the things that are jumping up a little bit, and I'm sitting at a good spot. I'm sitting at a good level. If that helps. Does that help? How about this? Does this make it? Oh, there it is. So, okay, cool. I've got a decent level. And it's a good place to start. So, over a decade, Talacor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. But the only true fit that matters is yours. It could be a little bit louder, but I think it's going to be fine. And this is not, you don't just do this once. You don't just go, oh, okay, cool, done. No, you're going to end up, hopefully, you should end up going through this process, bouncing it out, go through the process again, strip it all back and do it again, and see which one you like best. This is the beauty of digital audios. I can save all of this at any stage and name it whatever I want, and that way I can always go back to it. That way I don't have to remember anything. I don't have to do the same, do anything in certain order. It's always right here for me. And any piece of software that doesn't allow you to use live plugins, stop using it. See how I did that? So, so the first thing that's going to go in your chain is your gate. Gates are pretty easy. They're pretty binary. They're either opened or closed, right? Think about a gate like an old school grocery store door. Where old school, I'm going to show you how old I am. They used to be pressure pads. And when you stepped on the pressure pad, the doors would open. When you walked through, the doors would close. That's what a gate is, only it uses volume. And if it's not enough volume, it's not going to open it. If the door is set too sensitively, then, a nice wind will open it. So just be careful with how you set this. So what's the best way to sort of set these things? I'm going to be looking at primarily these knobs here. I'll explain what hysteresis is. But for the most part, these are the knobs that most gates are going to have: a threshold, reduction, attack, hold, and release. Some of them have hysteresis, some don't. So for me, here is how I do my gating, how I sort of adjust my gate. I record silence because I'm just recording the ambient noise. I don't need to record my voice. That's not what I'm concerned with. That's not what the gate needs to be being affected by or needs to be mitigating. It needs to be mitigating the noise. So it's not a lot of noise. My door's open too. That's impressive. I'm going to do this to make my point a little bit better because, as you can see, I was so prepared. So I'm going to silence. Okay, that's enough. And all I did was turn the mic pre up so that, you know, we could really get some of that noise in there. I know the tab thing. Don't tell me I can do the tab thing. I'm well aware of the tab thing. I never do the tab thing. I always open my windows like a jackass. So there's this noise, right? So if I turn on the gate, great. But what the gate, so I'm going to set my threshold to where, okay, so it's open the whole time. Threshold is low enough that the noise itself is opening it. So I'm going to bring this up until it closes, just until it closes. There. That's all. That's because I want it to be right on that edge, right? And now this reduction, the reduction says, how much do you want it, when it closes, how much do you want it to reduce the overall volume? And again, with plugins, I don't want them to work too hard, and I don't want them to overwork. There is no reason that this should reduce by 100% for what's amounting to minus 50 decibels, right? There's no reason that it should be shutting everything down. So I can open it up, and now it's not reducing at all, right? I'm going to lower this till it gets to the point where now it's reduced it enough. There's still going to be volume in there. There's still going to be sound in there, and that's okay. We're not here, again, if we're chopping out the sound, it's really going to, it's going to sound unnatural. So I'm just reducing by about 11 decibels. You can play, again, all of these we're going to be finessing as we go, but now we know where our line is, right? For our sound. Attack. Attack is when you pass this threshold, how fast does it open? So think about this as sort of a mound like this. It's going to go straight up, straight across, straight down. It's a box right now because it's opening really quick. It's closing. It's not really holding all that much, and it's closing really quick. That's an unnatural shape. We want sort of roundedness. So on your attack, very rarely should you be at 0, because that's where you're going to get that sort of that opening sound. So 3 milliseconds is fine. I very rarely touch this, and you don't want it to take too long to open because then it will cut off the beginnings of your words. You don't want it to open too quickly because it'll sound unnatural. 3 milliseconds is okay. Your hold time is basically once you've gone below this threshold, how long it will stay open, right? Not how fast it closes, that's what release is, but how long it will stay open. Again, I very rarely touch this because this is not a very natural thing. The release time is where you're going to find, and in hysteresis a little bit, but the release time is where you're going to find your natural, because this is over time, and it's, instead of it chopping down, end threshold, chop down, you can actually make it go like this and sort of fade out a little bit. So that way, the ends of your sentences, the S's at the ends of sentences, or the, you know, little bit of breathing at the end of a sentence that sounds natural is going to still be there. And let me just say that right now, breathing is natural. Breathing is a normal thing. People do it all the time. Okay. And so when you're doing voiceover and it's a conversational voiceover, breathe. Don't sit there and try and cut out every single breath in your audio. That number one, it's a waste of time. Number two, it's just going to sound unnatural. So notice that choppy, choppy, choppy. If I do this, oh yeah, no, that's a threshold issue. But as it's opening, I can have it open slower, but it'll sound really weird. It's not going to sound weird now because there's nothing really going on. So I'm going to silence. So I'm going to silence. So what I'm listening to there is the end of it. I want to know how long it's taking. So I can go like this. So I'm going to silence and hear how it goes. Oh, right. That noise cuts out. Well, that's a little too long. So I'm going to silence. Cool. There's nothing wrong with that. A little bit of tail on the end of it to just let it do what it's doing. I might reduce it a little bit more. I'm just certainly not going to be putting it down to 0 or down 100%. Hysteresis is, I'll explain that really quickly. It's a second threshold. It's an ending threshold. And it's saying, what it's saying at -3 is that the threshold to open it is -48. The threshold to close it is 3 decibels below that. So that it's another way of controlling release if you want to. But some have this, some don't, but almost all of them have a release knob. So playing around with the release in order to make sure that ending doesn't just chop off, that's what that's there for. And filters, don't bother. That's for something completely different. So we've got this to a place that I don't seem to mind. I was so prepared. So I'm talking quietly and it's still getting through. Let's see what it whispers, because as you can see, and see, here's the thing. This particular sound, because as you can see, I'm curious because, yeah, okay. So I've set the threshold right for quiet stuff. So I've set the threshold right for quiet stuff, right? So we're good. So it's working, but it's not working too hard. I don't have to shout in order for the gate to open. Brilliant. This is going to be called an EQ, but I'm going to treat it like a filter. And we're going to go, now that we have the gate done, we can go back to our wonderful script that sounds so good. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. But the only true fit that matters, notice when I said, but the only true fit, the B got cut off, that was because the attack was too high. So your comfort, prevent injuries. Notice there's no P on that. It's prevent injuries. Your comfort, prevent injury. That's because my attack is too slow. So this is the front of the words. This is the end of the words. So I'm gonna put it back to 3. Your comfort, prevent injuries, and that P is back. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. And again, I'm confirming with my eyes. So I'm looking at this here, making sure that when it needs to be opened, it's opened, and when it's closed, it's closed. If I'm noticing it's going, crazy and wonky, well, then I need to start adjusting my thresholds a little bit, just to I might reduce it so that it opens more, or if it's opening too much, I might raise it up. So I'm looking at that stuff. But now I'm going to move on to the filter. I can always come back. But I will say this now, and I'm going to say it again. If you change anything from at the top of your signal chain, you have to, at the very least, address the rest of the stuff that follows it. Because anything that I do to the gate is going to affect how this EQ and how this compressor work. Okay? So if and my mic pre is going to affect how the gate works. So if I play with anything at the top of my chain, I have to at least look at, I may not need to make any fixes, but I at the very least have to look at what follows it to make sure that it's still functioning properly. So yes, I might go back and play with the gate, but that means then I'm going to have to go and I'm going to have to play with everything else that we add into this chain. So right now we're going to put in a filter. Your comfort. Why? Prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of. So we're listening. Sounds fine. It's not horrible. It's not great, but it's not horrible. What are the qualities of it? These are the things that I'm listening to right now. What is the quality of this sound? It's a little muddy. It's a little lifeless. Okay. Lifeless, muddy. Muddy is an EQ word, right? If it's a sounding word. Lifeless, that could be a compressor word. That could be an EQ word. The main thing I use filtering for is to remove frequencies that either A, I can't hear, but that can affect my sound, or B, that I just want out of the way. Because as we will talk about EQ, no frequency exists on its own. So when we talk about EQ and we talk about these frequencies, 400 hertz, 4,000 hertz, or 4 kilohertz, we are talking about notes on a keyboard. Wrap your head around that for a second. We'll come to that in a minute. But with regards to filters, look at EQ, simmer down. Look at EQ as a volume knob. So anything you do in an EQ is going to either add or subtract volume. What I'm doing here, let's say, is I am telling it that anything from 60 hertz down is going to be reduced and take it out. By the time you get to 20 hertz, it's all gone. You're going to see varying degrees. And this is when I said this can be surgical or it can be a blunt instrument. This would be a surgical instrument, meaning it's gradual. It starts at around 100, but it's 6 decibels per octave. So again, what did I say? Frequencies are musical notes, because when you tune a guitar, you're tuning it to what's in America. You're tuning it to what's called A440. In England, I think it's 420 or something like that. But in America, you're tuning a guitar to A440. What does that mean? It means 440 hertz. The note A on a piano is 440 hertz. It's right in here. What's an octave above that? An octave above that is 880 hertz. Double that number, multiply it by 2. That's an octave above. That's the A, an octave above A440 on a piano. Okay. And same with below, 220, and so on and so forth, all the way down and all the way up. So there are A's, there's the note A all across this span, but in varying octaves. So when this says 6 decibels per octave, 6 dB/octave, that means what's an octave of 60? 30. So by the time you get to 30, it's reduced it by 6 decibels. Half of 30 is 15. By the time you get to 15, it's reduced it by 12. Okay, or it's reduced another 6, i.e. 12. And that's a subtle way of doing things. But if you change this to 48 decibels per octave, well, then the minute you get to 30, if you're starting at 60, the minute you get to 30, it's gone. It's gone. Everything is gone from here down. It's a very sharp curve. And that's because you're reducing it by 48 decibels per octave. So this becomes a very blunt instrument. I like to use my filters a little less than that. 6 decibels per octave is fine. It really depends on your studio, what the closet that you're in, the room that you're in, whatever you're in. What you're trying to mitigate here more than anything else are low frequency standing waves in your room that you don't necessarily hear. Okay, simmer down. So for example, when I say that you can affect your sound without realizing it, this is where listening with your ears, but confirming with your eyes, your comfort, prevent injury. So I want you to look at, for over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their, let's do this. Let's do it this way. I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to turn on this EQ. This EQ is an EQ. I mean, they're both EQs, but I'm using it as an prevent injuries, right? So I'm going to take this frequency here and I'm going to raise it up. Okay. Now you're going to hear this and it'll sound a little different, I believe. But it won't sound all that much different. But there'll be a significant difference. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands. So watch this. Watch my level here. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor is, okay, great. Watch. Your comfort, prevent injuries. It's now, over a decade, it's now 2 decibels louder, but it doesn't sound 2 decibels louder, but it is. So before the EQ, comfort, prevent injuries. I'm peaking at 11.6. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. Afterwards, but the only true fit that matters, I'm almost 3 decibels louder. Evolved from 10,000s. Oh God, your comfort. The fact is, you're not going to hear it because the frequencies are so low. So be careful, because you can make mistakes like this and not know it, is what I'm trying to say. Sound is not always what you hear necessarily, but if you have a filter set like this, then anything down here that you accidentally have going on doesn't really matter, because it's going to be cut before you even get to that EQ. Is this making sense? God, I hope so. So you've got your filter, and here's how I look at filters again. I'm going to just do this really quick. The human ear hears between 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz, unless you've ever been to a concert or been anywhere in a large crowd, in which case you now don't hear those frequencies anymore. So the human ear can hear that, I guess, but it doesn't really. So I want to get these out of the way, because, as I said, none of these frequencies exist on their own. So 60, 120, 240, all of those octaves, if you have a bunch of 60 in there, it's going to resonate with 120. It's going to resonate with the frequencies up here that I'm going to want in there, but I don't want them to get crowded and muddied by their sympathetic frequencies. Also, these frequencies down here, this is a small room that I'm in, so they tend to build up. So I want to get them out before they even get to the next EQ or get to the compressor, because they're going to affect how that compressor and how those EQs function. And the high-end frequency stuff, I don't really worry about that right now. I'm going to worry about it later once I start putting EQ and start putting things in. But I do know that I usually end up around 15, and then I just kind of roll it off. Your comfort, prevent injuries. And AB it, your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the, don't really hear it. It's doing something, I guarantee it, but you're not hearing it. And that's great. Brilliant. Next is going to be an EQ. How do I look at EQ? I look at EQ this way. Again, if I can hear it, it's not working properly. I want to try as best I can to utilize subtractive EQ over additive EQ, any chance I get. So if it sounds muddy, right? If it sounds mid-rangey like this, I'm not going to add high end to fix that. I'm going to subtract low mids. So your comfort, we're going to prevent injuries. For over a decade, I'm turning this off so that you don't have the benefit of seeing. You're using your ears more. So let's listen to this really quick. Hear what it sounds like. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. It doesn't sound horrible. This doesn't sound bad, but I could easily tell myself, well, it sounds a little muddy in the mid to low mids, right? Okay, great. So that's around 200 to 500. So instead of your comfort, I could go prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor, oh, that brightened it up. That's nice. Yeah, but it also added volume, which is going to affect how the compressor works. I've now just added, because again, these are in decibels, 5 decibels of volume at first of all, at 3K, but also, as you can see, 2K, 1K, 4K, 6K, 8K, 10K, because of the bandwidth. And that's what this is. This is bandwidth. This can be your best friend. But let me go back to subtractive. So instead of doing your comfort, prevent injuries. Sounds great. For over a decade, it's a way to get there. My preferred way to get there would be to do this instead. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. But the only true fit that matters, the difference being, let's AB and let's see what happens. So what did I do? I did 3K at about +3, right? Okay, cool. So here's the +3, or the subtractive. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the, cool. All right. Now with this, your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on. It's louder, and it is a little bit brighter, but I haven't taken away the mud. I've just made it brighter. So this is not, to my way of thinking, the best solution. It's a solution, but it's not the best solution. I want to take away what I don't like. I don't want to add something to it in order to make you not see it, right? That doesn't make sense in life. It's not going to make sense in EQ. Your comfort. So prevent injuries. The other thing that I look at when I'm looking at EQ is the decibels that I'm raising or lowering. My rule of thumb is no more than 5 decibels either way. And as I grow higher, so I want to do about 2 decibels. If the higher I go, the thinner I want that bandwidth, because as you can see, the higher you go, the more frequencies around it that you're going to be affecting. So if you have the ability to have what's called a parametric EQ, which is what this is, and you can do this with the bandwidth, that's great, because now you know you are only affecting the frequency you want. And if you notice, I'm going to push this. So this is what, 9 decibels, right? Your comfort, prevent injuries. Hear that resonant frequency? It's kind of gross, but it's only that frequency that's being affected. Now watch when I raise the bandwidth, or lower the bandwidth as the case may be, and widen it, all of a sudden it's going to get louder. It's going to get all hell's going to break loose. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike. But the only true fit that matters, and that's because I'm no longer just affecting 392. I'm affecting all of these frequencies. So the more you raise or lower, the more you raise or cut, the thinner I want your bandwidth, because it's more control that way. If you're going, but notice if I go 3 decibels and I have a wide bandwidth, your comfort, it's not going to affect so much. For over a decade, affecting Talakor has helped thousands, but it's going to be a lot more subtle than if I am raising or lowering your comfort. Prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands. That has a drastic effect. Your comfort. Prevent injuries. For over a decade, much less of an effect. Thousands of riders because the bandwidth is thinner. So understand that when you're playing with EQ, the more you feel you need to move stuff around, thinner your bandwidth. The other thing is this. Remember this. You saw it on my signal chain. I have 2 EQs. I could have 3. I could have 4. You could have 10. You have 20 EQs. There is no right way to do that, right? If I want to go like this and go, your comfort, prevent injuries. Great, that sounds awesome. Let's move on to compression. I can do that. And then after the compressor, I can put an EQ. And on that EQ, I can change one thing. And on the next EQ, I can change one thing. And I can do that all day long if I want to. So when you get it to a place that sounds good, leave it there. Don't, there's no reason, and move on to the next thing. But comfort, prevent injuries. What I want to do, so I've addressed the mud, your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, we've cleaned it up a little bit. Prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders. Cool. Sort of cleaned it up. I haven't, but I've also lost a tiny bit of low end. I've lost just a tiny bit of that low end. Now I know where it is because I work here every day. But it's about 120. Your comfort, prevent injuries. It's there. That's that nice warm low end that isn't mid-rangey and offensive. So I'm going to put your comfort. I'm going to add 2 decibels injuries because I want to make sure Talakor has helped thousands of riders. This isn't affecting that frequency. Now, I could also do this if I wanted to. I could just go like this and thin this up. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped, because now I know it's not getting into this area here, and I'm just affecting the one frequency that I wanted. So again, surgical or blunt instrument. I'm not saying don't ever add. But I am saying when you do add, realize that you're adding volume. When you're cutting, you're cutting volume. So there, your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the, cool. I mean, it still sounds natural.
Bradford, we got about 10 minutes.
Oh, God, really? Good.
It's flown by.
All right. We got 10 minutes. All right. So I'm just going to add a little bit of high end injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped. There it is. Sounds great, right? No. So I'm just going to add a little bit of high end just because I know there's comfort. Prevent injuries. For over a decade, Talakor has helped thousands of riders find their, all right, because I really want to move on to compression because I want you to be able to see what a compressor does. So compressor, threshold, ratio, knee, attack, release. These are all different types of compressors. They all have relatively the same stuff going on as far as how to do things. Some have less, and some have more. Some work utilizing optics, some utilize electronics, some utilize voltage. These are all models of compressors, but this is just your standard compressor, your comfort. So prevent injury. When I have a compressor, I don't want that compressor to work unless I get louder than my normal volume. So if I'm not being aggressive, then my compressor should never be working. Or it should be working very, 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 very little. If your sound, and I want you to notice what I titled this, OC bad, no, no, no. If you sound like this, then you are super compressed. You can literally hear the back of my throat with this amount of compression, and it's disgusting. Please don't do that ever again. Stop it. Stop it. Thank you. Anyway, so now we're back to my normal sound. But when you're using a compressor, as I said, and I'll show you on my channel here, on my thing. So here's where my compressor is set on my, this is what the signal that I use. The compressor is on, but it's not working unless I go, ha! Unless I get loud, it is doing a little bit because I've got this set wrong. But, oh no, it's working. So when I attack a word, it's working, but not very much. This is your compressor working, and this is my gate opening and closing. So it's not working all that much, number one. Number two, the threshold is set to +5, and it's set to less than 2-to-1 ratio. What does that mean? It means that when it does work, it's working very lightly. I'm not going to get into super technical stuff because I want you to stay awake. But understand that the higher the ratio, that means when it's working, the higher the ratio is, the more it's affecting it. So when it does work, it's real. If I push this all the way up, when it does work, notice I didn't change the threshold, but it's working harder because I changed the ratio. So, and then I have another compressor here in the chain that is also set to, I believe, 2-to-1. It's set to 2-to-1, and it's barely working. What my compressors do is catch me when I get a little out of hand. That's all they're supposed to do. You don't want them to be affecting your sound completely like this. And notice, by the way, when I changed the threshold, it didn't make it louder, it made it quieter. Why? Because that's what compression does. So understand that if your compressor is squashing everything, it's working too hard. But also understand this, if you're using two compressors, which you can and should, if you want to step down your compression, it's multiplicative. So this 2-to-1 compressor going into this 2-to-1 compressor is a 4-to-1 compressor. Okay, if it was a 2-to-1 compressor going into a 6-to-1 compressor, it would be, the output ultimately would be 12-to-1 compression. And that's a lot of compression. So I like to stay in the 2-to-1 range personally. So here's how I can prove to you compression makes things quieter. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, this is telling you thousands of riders find that it's reducing by this amount of decibels. It's not doing anything when it's not working. It's not making anything louder. It's not raising volume. It's showing you it's not doing that. It's making things quieter. That's what compression does. And compression can work against you. You have a script. It's got a word in bold or it's got a word in italics. What do you want to do with it? You want to emphasize that word. If you have too much compression and you emphasize that word will be the quietest word in your entire read. It will go completely against what you want it to do. So compression, again, comfort. I'm going to set my threshold to where, for over a decade, Talicor has helped thousands of riders find their optimal positions on the bike, right? But the only true, the beauty of this is I can see where my peak is. My peak is at -10, and I've got this set to -10. So it's not going to work because I'm not going past -10. So if I can see that, great. Your comfort, prevent injuries. For over a decade, if I've got a meter, I can see that it's not doing anything on the bike. But the only true fit now it's starting to work is yours, and it's only working from 10,000. Now I'm going to go like this, with something like this. I'm going to go. You're going to be speaking, and then yes, I know I don't have my script up because I'm a horrible person. Talicor helps you do this, that, and the other thing. Right? I'm going to hit some words. Ooh, look at that horrible person. Talicor helps you do this, that, and the other thing. So I'm looking at horrible person. So I'm going to, that was a horrible example. I'm the worst teacher ever. Let me find this again. I know. Now you've got me rushed. Improve your performance, increase your comfort, prevent injuries. There. It can be that subtle. I want the first three to not be touched. I want prevent to be, find this again, messed with a little bit. Now you've got me rushed. So improve your performance, increase your comfort, prevent injuries. So now I can see it's working when I say prevent. Got me rushed. Cool. Improve your performance, increase your comfort, prevent injuries. That's as much compression as I want in my improve your performance, increase your comfort, prevent injuries. That's as much compression as I want on my first compressor. Why? Because its job is just to catch if I get a little out of hand. I don't want it to squash anything. I don't want it to affect my sound. I want to make sure that my output level isn't going crazy, right? And I want to make sure that I'm not doing too much, that this is there to go, It's not there to go, no. It's just there to go, The limiter is there to go, no. This just goes, no, 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 no. Right. And you could put three of these together at 2-to-1 ratio and have 2-to-1 to 2-to-1, which is 4-to-1 times 2-to-1 and 8-to-1. And then you could ask yourself, well, why don't you just put an 8-to-1 on there? Well, because an 8-to-1 is going to be far more brutal, whereas a 2-to-1 is going to step it down, because that second one is catching what the first one didn't catch. But the first one already caught some stuff. So there's ways to stack your compression. And so you're primarily going to be playing with your threshold and your ratio. Attack, release, sure. Attack, again, you don't want it super strict because you're going to get that pumpy sound. And your release, you don't want it too slow because, again, you'll get that sort of pumpy compression that you hear in dance music all the time. What makes a compressor louder is not compression, it's makeup gain. So what a compressor does is it makes loud things quieter, which then allows you to take the whole signal and make it louder because you have headroom. You've given yourself room to move. But it doesn't make the quieter stuff louder. The makeup gain does. But understand, when you make that louder, you're also making the noise in your signal louder. So be careful with that. And then finally, limiters. How do I use limiters? I use limiters only in auditions. What does a limiter do? A limiter basically, it limits the output. You set the output level to where I like it, which is about -4. That gives whoever I'm, when I'm sending stuff out, or when I'm doing auditions, that makes sure that I can just do a bunch of auditions and I don't have to worry about whether I'm too loud or not. If I get crazy, it's going to keep it there.
Got me rushed.
So
Improve
no matter
your
how
performance,
loud,
increase your comfort. Prevent.
no matter how loud I make this, it's never going to go above -4. It's going to sound louder because I'm pushing more sound through a smaller hole. I know what I just did and I'm fine with it. But the reality is it's called apparent volume. It sounds louder because what's coming in is louder, but the output level is -4. So it will never get louder than -4, no matter what you do. So that way I can,
Got me rushed.
if my
Improve your
auditions are quiet,
performance, increase
if I
your
did
comfort.
something wrong, if I read and I was a little too relaxed and I was back here, well, then I can kind of
Got me rushed.
push the input gain from my
Improve your
limiter
performance, increase your comfort.
and know that it's never going to go above -4. I know I missed a bunch of stuff. I spent too much time on those gates. If you got questions, we can do this. I hope that helped in any way, shape, or form.
I know it's a lot of information, and I know definitely for some beginners, but I know it's a lot of very useful information, especially when getting a better understanding of the tools and what they actually do and how to use them. So I know we have lots of questions. So
Bring them.
Going to hop in there. I know we're at about time now, but I wanted to make sure I didn't want to cut it off because all of this, it ties together. So I didn't want to cut it off. So definitely we can get to some questions now. So if anyone has some questions, we'll pop them down into the Q&A here and I'll start asking them out. So here we go, Bradford.
Go for it.
All right. This one's from Amy. What are your thoughts on isotope and other tools to remove clicks or mouth noises? Do you prefer to remove these noises manually instead, or do you what's your thoughts?
I think if you have clicks and mouth noises, again, that might be a performative issue. I don't like them, and I don't like them because for the same reasons I don't like de-essers. In the wrong hands and without proper understanding, those things were invented for records. The clicks and pops and all of that stuff originally were invented so that you could put records onto CDs and you could take out the clicks and pops. It's just yes, I would rather you mitigate clicks and pops performatively and or with EQ. If you've got clicks and pops also, it might be a compression issue. You might be too compressed. As you heard when I had that super compressed sound, you really get all of a sudden those things become very apparent because there's so much compression and there's so much makeup gain. Whereas now they just sound like natural things. They're not super in your face. So again, if you're having pops and clicks, try apple juice if it's a performative issue. If it's a sound issue, then I would check your compression and see where your threshold is. Because your voice naturally clicks and pops. And also look at EQ. Yeah. I don't like isotope. I love isotope for a lot of things. But again, in the wrong hands and in the hands of somebody that doesn't necessarily know the ins and outs of the plugin, the denoiser, de-esser, declicker, and all that stuff can be detrimental. And it's strapping it across your entire audio signal. It does a lot. It's a very blunt instrument. That's my opinion.
Awesome. And the next one here we have from George. He said, I assume you're adjusting the input gain at the interface and not in the DAW.
Yeah. Your box, your interface, your box, whatever you're plugging your mic into, that's where your mic pre is going to be. I would say 99% of the time. I can't think of one where it's not there. Yeah. And that's because it's a matter of voltage. You're sending voltage to a microphone. When you're applying gain, I had a teacher at Berkeley who used to kill us anytime we called it volume, because it's gain. It's actual voltage that you're adding to the microphone. And you want to think about your mic pre as an ear. So where do I want this microphone to listen? I want it to listen about 3 to 4 inches off my mic. I don't want it to be listening out here, because this is where the noise is. So as I'm adjusting my mic pre, I want to imagine that ear is getting bigger. And I don't want it this big because there's noise out here. I want it as small as possible, and I can adjust the volume, quote unquote, or loudness later on with compression or with makeup gain and with those sorts of things. Because understand, if you have it really loud at the microphone and you're picking up all this noise, later on when you adjust the gain, you're also adjusting gain on that noise, and you're making your gate work harder and all that stuff. So, judicious use of a mic pre, rather than cranking up your mic pre to make it louder, to make it sound like this, then, that doesn't help anybody. But, but I can work better with a quieter mic pre than I can with a super loud mic pre. So yes, I'm adjusting my gain at the box.
Awesome.
Yep.
And got a question from Jeffrey here. Is it worth investing in a custom graphic EQs and custom filter curves, or should he stay away?
I don't know what he means by custom EQ curves, like having somebody.
So it says in a custom graphic EQ and custom filter curves.
Are you buying somebody else's curves? I don't know if you're asking about templates or those sorts of things. Templates are great places to start. They're always a good place to start. With regard to EQ and things like that and plugins to buy, my recommendation is an isotope recommendation, which is Nectar, for people that are starting out. And the reason I do that is I don't want you to spend a boatload of money on things you don't need, whereas Nectar has in one unit everything that you need. I don't get paid by them. I'm not endorsed. I just like that plugin. And for beginners, it has a lot of cool templates in it for voiceover. It's mainly for singers, but there's stuff you don't need. There's reverb and delay, but there are everything that you need in the chain is right there in Nectar, which is always good. But it's their proprietary software. Whereas what I showed you today was all the stuff that comes with Logic. And I'm sure Twisted Wave comes with their plugins, Presonus comes with their plugins and all that. So, you can get by without buying anything once you've gotten your DAW kind of figured out, so long as you don't use a garbage DAW.
Awesome. So this one's from Susan there. Thanks for all the information, Bradford. It was a little bit over her head because she is, not a tech guru like yourself there in regards to audio.
Sure.
Remember what you did when you first started out? And is there kind of like a quick tip that you could kind of point somebody in regards to a novice?
Yes. Yes. Talk to somebody like me. In all honesty, because there's so much information out there on the internet, and a lot of it is either false, or it's one-sided, or it's not the information that you actually were looking for. Look, when you put a YouTube video out, what do you want? You want clicks. So you title it with something amazing. You put, a naked person as the highlight picture, and then everybody clicks on it. Does that mean it's good information? No. Just because everybody liked it, does it mean it's the right information for you? No. As I said, holistically, every studio and every microphone and every voice is different. So the best way for you, and this is not for me to hype myself or that sort of thing, but is to talk to somebody, get coaching from somebody like me that can go, send me your audio, I'll listen to it, and we can troubleshoot it from there. Because I cannot tell you right now, Susan, was that her name?
Yeah.
I can't say, hey, Susan, roll off 5 decibels of 5K. Like, that's just not going to help you. But how did I get started? I got started by just playing. I love doing this stuff, and I would just get into my whatever I was using at the time. It was tape. I'm old, whatever. But but as I got into digital stuff, I mean, the beauty is you can't destroy anything. You can't do anything wrong. Set up a signal chain that, however you want, and then just play with it. And when it sounds good, immediately save it as a template, or save the audio and, or make note of what you're doing and just and save it as a preset. And then that way you can always come back to it and go, oh God, I thought that sounded good at one point in time. That's crazy. Or, oh, I was on the right track before, I got off track afterwards. So, that's what I would say. I would say, take notes, trust your ears, confirm with your eyes.
Awesome. And got one from Carmen. How does normalizing fit into post-production?
It doesn't. Stop it. Again, we're talking about super blunt instruments. If you have your output at a reasonable level, there's no reason to normalize. Now, if you're talking about normalizing the way I use a limiter, meaning, so when I throw my limiter on, I use it for auditions, and I use it for a couple of reasons. Again, one, because I'm doing various auditions all day long. Some are loud, some are quiet. A limiter makes sure that even the loud ones, I don't have to adjust anything. I can just do my auditions and focus on that. But I also use it to make my audition a competitive volume. Back in the day with music, Metallica was and Bob Rock, I believe, were accused of the loudness wars. And that was where maximization and upward compression became the bane of musical existence. And it was this competition of music trying to be louder than the next song or the song before it. And normalization is a very blunt instrument and can get you into a lot of trouble. It doesn't fix anything. It just makes the average of your signal at whatever volume you set it at. Well, now here's the deal. If in the beginning you're talking like this, and you're doing a natural read, and then at the end you bring up your volume a little bit, it's going to now normalize that to where that pre-loud volume is super loud. It's going to go, well, it was way down here and it was way up here. Well, now we're just going to raise everything up. And it's going to make everything louder. And that makes the loud stuff super loud and the quiet stuff loud. And again, it's a blunt instrument. It affects everything. So to me, normalization, it's just not something that I've ever seen get subtly used. I think you're better off with a solid chain, i.e. mic pre, EQ, compressor, limiter, and trusting and it sounds natural. It doesn't sound overhyped. It doesn't sound super compressed. It just sounds like a natural person talking. That will get you a job over competitive volume or over making it louder. If you need to use normalization, there's something fundamentally wrong at the beginning of your chain. You might need to up your mic pre, or you might need to, bring volume in at some other point. So be careful with that. Awesome.
Now, the last one here, just because we are, of course, over time here. This will be the last one.
That's him, not me. I have all day. I'm just saying, I'll answer questions all day.
Well, that's actually perfect. That ties into the question. Joel says, he's really happy for the information. I love all of this. Where can I learn more? How can they get in touch with you?
HastingsVO.com or HastingsVO@gmail. Is fine. That's the best way. Don't inundate me with audio and expect me to give you, a thing. I try to help people as much as possible. I don't, any of my students know, I don't coach and all that stuff to make myself $1 million. I do it because I love doing it. I love talking about audio. I love talking about this kind of stuff. And I love helping people figure out the best way to make their sound natural, not super hyped, not over compressed, and to understand it to the point where later on, if somebody says to them, hey, can you dial back your compression a little bit? You feel comfortable enough to go, oh yeah, sure. And know how to do it, know why you're doing it, know what you're doing. It's hard to do that in this sort of situation where, we've got a limited amount of time, but I am always, I love helping out. So yeah, those are the best ways to get in touch with me. But just be prepared. If you ask me about gear and I tell you it's going to be a 20-minute conversation, it's going to be an hour long.
I can vouch for that.
My mom is famous for just going, I don't know what you're talking about, but you sound very excited about it. So, you know, because she gets the brunt of it a lot of the time. So yeah, I mean, that's the best way to do it.
Awesome. Sounds good. So do you want to just repeat one more time your website and your email there?
HastingsVO at Gmail or HastingsVO.com.
Awesome. Other than that, guys, that's all the time we have today. Thank you very much, Bradford, for coming out and sharing the wealth of information you have there on audio.
I hope it helped. I really hope it helped. I know we got rushed, and I apologize.
My apologies for that as well.
You're good. You're good.
But yeah, just thank you, everybody, Hastings and everybody who joined for setting aside this time. And I hope it helps as well. So you can expect to see us next month again. And until then, I hope you have a great time.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.